The chair recognizes Mr. Anchia to speak against the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. It pains me to speak against a bill that people have worked so hard on because I know that the motivations in our heart are good. I know they come at this issue with a long history in law enforcement as Sheriff Louderback and somebody who I believe has the best interest of this state in Representative Spiller. I take issue mainly with this legislature's approach to the issue of immigration. Our consistent refrain in this body has been enforcement only, never advocating for a safe, legal, transparent solution to the age-old challenge of Texas, which is transnational flows of people. Because people have been coming through Texas for centuries, whether it was on the Camino Real, up through places like San Antonio, through El Paso del Norte in El Paso, kinship relationships on a border that moves successively over and over again through different wars, annexations, treaties. And regardless of what we pass in this bill and the merits of this bill, the transnational movement of people will continue. So the real question for policymakers is, how do we do that in a way that is safe, that is legal, that is honorable for the worker, for the traveler? Because this state, ladies and gentlemen, the first fact that I will state for this body is this state has been built by immigrants. Authorized, unauthorized, those who came willingly, those who were refugees of war, and those who were enslaved. This place has been built by people who have come from elsewhere, including, and I'm going to give you a little history lesson, the Mexican state representative who is pictured on the wall behind me today. Stephen F. Austin was not from Texas. He, in fact, was a legislator, a state legislator in the state of Coahuila y Texas, in what was Mexico. That Mexican guy right over there. Sam Houston was born in Virginia, came through Tennessee. Davy Crockett, a Tennessean. All were immigrants to the state, not from here. We had the German Immigration Company, for example, that played a key role in transporting thousands of Germans to Texas in the mid-1800s. Representative Louderback, Representative Kitzman, all of you who have German names from Central Texas. The reason we have a Czech stop on I-35 where we all get kolaches is because the Czechoslovakian community went there. We have Swedish Hill here in Austin. Obviously, the U.S. annexed parts of Mexico, including Texas after the Texas Revolution in 1936, and later after the Mexican-American War. So that families like Bobby Guerra's family, who had a Spanish land grant, the border skipped your family, Bobby. You were on one side of the border, your family and your heirs were part of the Kingdom of Spain, Spain's northern territory here, which is Texas, later Mexico, then Texas. And so when we think about immigration in this way, we just need to acknowledge that this has always been a transshipment point. This has always been a place where people for centuries have been traveling. This state capitol, members, and I see a lot of the people in the audience, and I hope you enjoy our state capitol today. The pink granite of this state capitol was cut by immigrants. They were from Scotland because they were the best granite cutters in the world, and they were brought here to cut the granite on the facade of this capitol. And I'm glad Representative Moody spoke earlier today because he's from El Paso, and I referred to it earlier. that was known as the Mexican Ellis Island, according to the Library of Congress, because it served as a major point of entry for Mexican immigrants crossing the border into the United States, just like Ellis Island in New York, where my father came to on a boat in the mid-50s. And so, members, I just want to acknowledge that Texas is great because of its immigrants. Texas continued to build this state. You cannot look at any of the skyscrapers on this skyline and not acknowledge that they're built by immigrant workers, authorized or unauthorized. And there lies the rub, members. That is the dirty little secret, because we say as a country, if you're willing to cross the border, to get across the river, to go through the desert, we have plentiful jobs here, ladies and gentlemen. You will be guaranteed a job in the United States. Why, members? Because transnational labor flows operate on economic principles that are centuries old: supply and demand. And we have an insatiable demand in this country for immigrant labor. We always have. And it shows no sign of stopping. So instead of having enforcement-only policies, as we do in this state, would it not make sense for us as a body to say to our friends in Congress, Congress, we are tired of this. We need a solution for this. It costs us money. It is inefficient, members. And it produces bad results. It rewards the cartels. It rewards human suffering. It rewards cruelty. We have possibly created the worst immigration system possible, because bodies like this like to focus on the enforcement side but will not focus on real solutions to making sure that we reduce legal immigration by increasing legal immigration, so that willing workers in Texas, willing workers abroad, will be matched with willing employers in a safe and legal system, so that we don't just have unauthorized immigrants in this state, because we have thousands and thousands of unauthorized companies in this state who gladly hire the unauthorized worker. And until we solve for that, ladies and gentlemen, we can pass all of these bills. We can talk till we're blue in the face about being tough on immigration, but it will not solve the challenge of this state, the challenge of this country. And until we have that political courage to do that, to say the words, to come up here and speak truth to power, to ask our colleagues in Washington to really act, every session we will come back over and over and over again and pass bills like this. And we will go back to our communities and say, oh, we did something on immigration. And it will never, ever, ever solve the challenge that is in front of us. According to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the oldest and largest business organization in this state, quite conservative, as you know, we need about 500,000 skilled and unskilled workers every year in the United States, because we're an economic powerhouse. We're a juggernaut. And as Texas is the eighth largest state, eighth largest economy in the world, we are part of that economic miracle. We need the workers. We need the workers in a safe and legal and transparent way, so that we can project our values as a state and continue to be the economic powerhouse that is driving the economy of the United States and the world. With that, members, I thank you for your time to share some ideas and experiences as this son of immigrants and as a member of this body for so long, who's seen bills like this over and over and over again that will never get at the heart of the problem. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity. Thank you, members.
Mr. Alcott, for what purpose?
Does the gentleman yield for a question?
Mr. Anchia, would you yield?
With pleasure, to my esteemed colleague, Representative Alcott.
Representative Chia, is my understanding of this bill, it deals with 287G programs, which is focused on removing criminal illegal aliens. Are you aware that that's the main focus of this bill?
Well, that is a narrow reading of the bill. This is part of a bigger discussion, Representative Alcott, related to criminalizing workers. Because you know what?
I
You know what?
understand
hold on,
that
hold
you're
on,
making
hold
it
on.
a bigger
Gentlemen,
issue.
please do not talk over each other.
You have to let me finish. If you're going to ask me a question, you're going to have to let me finish.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Mr. Louderback to speak in favor of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
Members, we'll
Mr.
attempt to
Shadowfly,
clarify.
for what purpose?
Would the gentleman yield for a couple questions?
Certainly.
He will.
Sheriff, this bill has been a massive undertaking, gathering information, understanding real-world implications, implementation, taking into account the real-life experiences of sheriffs like yourself. Who's predominantly responsible for gathering all the necessary information for this bill?
Myself.
And I do appreciate all the work that you put into it. We've worked with together, even in the interim as we were talking about this. One of the big questions that we've had from some of our strong border groups, our grassroots groups, has been, does this bill explicitly restrict in any way the task force model or the JE model?
This model and this team, you know, this is a team effort all the way. So from Representative Spiller to Senator Schwartner, you know, the 287G program is I need to clarify exactly which model we're using, which is the WSO model exclusively, and this bill only deals with the WSO model. But more importantly, this puts one warrant service officer in every county jail, 243 county jails in the state. It provides money for them. It's only the jail model, and it's funded. And so the counties are free to do over and above this model, but this model is the only one that is funded, and it's the only subject of this bill, of this amendment, of this substitute.
So this bill, it funds that model, but just to clarify, just so everyone's aware, it's not going to restrict other models that if a county's sheriff's department wanted to go above and beyond.
There is no restriction for any model that they want to take. That's at their cost and at their expense, but they are free to do that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you, Representative Spiller, for this great bill.
Thank you. So, members, Texas will be the first and only state in the nation with a specialized warrant service officer, Texas edition, that will grant additional powers. Texas will be in a class of its own, once again, on a very important bill that's very necessary due to the complexity of immigration law. This puts one person in your jail, in your county, that ICE can go to and who can identify exactly what's going on with a foreign-born person. And that is a very necessary thing when you're running a jail here in Texas. And that's it streamlines the service. It provides safety. We don't let criminal aliens out of our county jails except to ICE. And that's what the bill does.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Canales, for what purpose?
the gentleman would yield.
Yes.
Mr. Louderback, would you yield?
Thank you,
will.
Sheriff. We've had long, arduous discussions about this bill, and I just want to ask you, as someone who has had their hands in the dirt, so to speak, with enforcement, with jailings, with county jails, you've run a jail, do you believe that this model that's being put forth is going to be efficient?
I do, Representative Canales. I think it's a minimum requirements. It's funded. The warrant service officer model was actually extended. The authority of the warrant service officer was actually extended by ICE 2 days ago, which is a major move for ICE to do to make this compatible. This is highly sought out by the federal administration at this time, and it works. The program works, and it's very effective.
That's my question to you. You've actually run the warrant service model, is that correct?
I have.
And was it effective and cost efficient?
Very effective. Very effective. When you can go to your citizens and tell them that anyone who came to the jail, anyone who comes to jail for any charge on a state charge, then they're going to be properly vetted, and they're going to probably be investigated. If ICE needs to be involved, then that's what this program does. It's an overlay in a county jail with a very good, efficient system from the federal government. It's one of the very few I've known.
Now, if this bill passes, it's going to be, as you mentioned, statewide. Would you say that that's going to bring a sense of consistency and normality to the system, that whether we do or don't know about it, we'll now know how it's being run statewide, which brings a certain clarity and accountability to the system? Would you agree with that?
It certainly does. Sheriffs come and go at times, but this being codified into state law, this gives us a consistent approach through every county jail.
That's also going to help the court system, the bondsmen, everybody know how this thing runs, because we know that it's consistent from county to county, not a hodgepodge of different programs being run by different sheriffs.
It'll actually streamline everything. It will actually make way more efficient for our court systems, for everyone. It will increase ICE's efficiency probably twofold.
So one of the things that we deal with along the border is it's people being there and being held on detainers, and there's different counties from El Paso to Hidalgo to Cameron County. This is going to make sure that everybody knows how this operates in one form or fashion. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I appreciate your work, Sheriff. I tend to agree with Representative Anchia that the federal government has wholly failed us in immigration policies. I believe that this nation is a nation of immigrants. I do believe that we do need to find a way to fix our immigration system, but this is definitely a more streamlined way to deal with the criminal aspect of it, and I appreciate your work. Thank you.
This will enable us as a state to take care of criminality.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Garcia Hernandez?
does the representative yield
Certainly.
for questions?
He will, ma'am. Go ahead.
Thank you, Representative. I had some concerns regarding the financial cost to our state for this, and my understanding is that there are federal grants that a lot of the sheriff's departments can qualify for. This will, in fact, they need to go through that route first before they apply for the grants that would be under this program. Is that your understanding?
This bill will only be for this narrow set of circumstances here, for a warrant service officer model in every jail. So there's dollars tied to that. Now, any other dollars that a sheriff's office applies for, OLS money, for example, that's separate.
Okay, and my understanding is, I know at least from Dallas County, which is the county that I represent, that they're projecting the cost to the county to implement this program is going to be $6.2 million to $10.6 million. And I know y'all had discussed that y'all had conversations with stakeholders all over the state, but I also understand Harris County projects $2 to $3 million, El Paso County at least $1.2 million. And I think the annual cost across the state is expected somewhere between $40 million to $75 million. But my understanding is that this particular program, the grant program, the total amount allocated is only for $20 million. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
So
go ahead.
Let me address your question.
Sure.
This model is a dual hat model, where you take an individual in your county jail who you've already employed and you're paying a salary to, and he wears two caps. He wears a warrant service officer model cap, which only requires 8 hours of online training. From that point, anyone who's quoting you that it's going to take $6.5 million to put this program in place, listen, I ran this program. I was the first one who started this in 2016. And got the first application in and started this program. It does not carry that cost unless that sheriff wants to go out and hire new people to administer the program. That's how they come up with that figure. But if you use dual hat people that you already have working for you, then the cost is not anywhere near that.
So I've had some discussions with my sheriff's department in Dallas County. I think their concern is obviously to what level it takes away from them being able to do other work and not being able to fully do this program as well. Is that something that you heard as well?
The gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you, Speaker.
I
Thank
can
you.
address it later.
Thank you, Representative.
The chair recognizes Ms. Morales from Harris to speak against the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. I felt impassioned to come up here and talk in opposition to this bill because when we're talking about immigration and illegal immigrants and all these words that we've been talking about the last few sessions, it impacts my district a lot because I represent many Latinos. I'm not just a legislator, I'm a proud granddaughter of Houston's Second Ward community, the first Latino neighborhood in Houston. My family, the Morales family, helped found one of the first Spanish language radio stations in Texas. And on that radio station, they didn't just share music, they shared news. Imagine if a hurricane was coming, how would people speaking in Spanish know unless they listened to that Spanish news? They shared community stories. It was a lifeline for newly arrived immigrant families trying to find their place in a new country. Thousands of people found jobs through this radio station on a program called Yo Necesito Trabajo. It means I need a job. They came to Houston, to Texas, and built our railroads, paved our roads, cook in our kitchens, and yes, help build the refineries and the ship channels that make Texas the economic powerhouse that it is. And they never came here for a handout. They came to work, just like my parents who taught me to respect people and not judge them by the papers in their pockets. This bill will not make our communities safer. It will make them more afraid. It sends a terrible message. When parents are scared to report abuse, when workers are fear calling the police after a crime, we all become less safe. In Harris County and in my district in particular, we rely on trust between law enforcement and the people they serve. And this bill breaks that trust. And I want to be clear, this bill isn't about border security, it's about fear. It targets people who have been here for decades. Folks who may be undocumented but are not unwanted. They are essential to our economy, to our faith communities, to our schools. And I know because I have buried them, I have prayed with them, I have watched their children grow into doctors and teachers. If Texas is about anything, it's about freedom and opportunity. This bill chips away at both, and I refuse to stand by while my district, while the very people who helped build this state are criminalized for trying to survive, and I urge you to vote no on this bill.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Garcia, for what purpose?
does the representative yield for questions?
Would you yield, ma'am?
Yes, I
She will.
yield.
Go ahead.
Representative Morales, can you tell us more about your family's history in Houston and why this is a personal issue to you?
It's very personal because it's taken me a while to understand the impact that my grandparents had with their radio station, KLVL, La Voz Latina, the first Spanish language radio station in the Gulf Coast where thousands of people were connected to jobs. I feel as though Houston became the largest economy in the state because we were welcoming to immigrants. In my district in particular, there's Spanish-speaking immigrants, but immigrants from all over the world have helped build our wonderful medical center and built the buildings in our city. And so for that reason, I needed to come up and speak.
Thank you. How would SB 8 affect trust between immigrant communities and law enforcement?
Thank you for that question, because recently there was an article in the Chronicle, the Houston Chronicle, our local newspaper, where a mom with a child, it was recorded that a police officer reported her to ICE, and all she was doing was reporting an accident that was happening a couple of blocks away. We can't have moms with children being reported to ICE just because of the way they look. This was just an officer who visually saw a person and assumed that they were undocumented. We cannot have that in our state.
What alternative solutions would you support for true immigration reform or
Well,
border safety?
Thank you. I agree with Chairman Anchia that we need to have Congress act. We need to support federal immigration reform that secures our border, because we all want a secure border, but also protects hardworking immigrant families. We need pathways to citizenship. And we don't need bills like this that are overreaching and make Texans afraid in their own communities.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
The chair recognizes Mr. Romero to speak against the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to start out by saying thank you as well to Sheriff Lauterbach. I think he brought a lot to the discussion about where we are now, making sure that this bill didn't have unintended consequences. I will never not defend the immigrant community. It's the only community I've ever known. I grew up in an undocumented household, a mixed family. Y'all have heard me talk about it before. The first thing I wanted to talk about is something that my dad told me when I first came here and I started talking about SB4 to my dad. And he says, "Oh, mijo," he says, "back in the day, if you got pulled over, you knew you were going back to Mexico." It's just the way it was. And when I think about SB4, I remember I gave a warning to folks then that something like asking folks to show me your papers would bring us back towards that time when my dad was around. And I told him, I said, "Do you know what rolling Mexicans is?" Back in the 80s, that was a term that was used for robbing folks at the convenience store. They'd be hiding around the corner. Those guys would come out on a Friday, buy their Marlboros, put them in that front pocket, and their money, their check would always be right behind that Marlboro, or their Winstons, or whatever it was. And as soon as that guy would make around the corner, they'd be there waiting on him. They'd beat them and steal from them. I was just a little kid playing video games, and I can remember rarely would their weekend pass that somebody didn't walk back in the store after getting beat up. It became a norm until it happened to my dad. And luckily I had 5 pretty tough brothers. And we had to take things into our own hands and make sure that those guys knew that they weren't welcome on our corner or by our convenience store. But that was an unsafe time. I heard somebody say yesterday, times are better. Well, I'll tell you that after SB4 happened, a lot of crime went up in Fort Worth, Texas. And I spoke to a former speaker, Speaker Bond, in that next session and begged him to not allow another anti-immigrant bill that chilled our community from calling police and from engaging people like Sheriff Lauterbach. I had a bar in my neighborhood, got robbed 17 times before they called police. And when they did, there was a sting. And one of those criminals put a bullet in Officer Garrett Hull's head. So sometimes when we're all out for enforcement, as Representative Anchia talks about, we don't think about those unintended consequences. We don't think about the lives that are lost, and a lot of times it's law enforcement that has no choice into what kind of crime they fight. Garrett Hull lost his life protecting immigrants, undocumented immigrants, on Biddison Street in South Fort Worth. And I'm going to tell you that while I'm going to accept that this bill is probably going to pass today, I'm not going to accept the chilling effect that's going to be created throughout this entire state of Texas, and many of you refuse to accept what Texas is and what we are. We're lucky, we're fortunate, we're blessed to have the people that help us build this state the way they have. Sheriff Lauterbach said that those people that are here on a state charge, that commit a crime, that none of us want those dangerous folks back out on the street, whether they're citizens or undocumented. But innocent people are going to be sent home. Those people that have been building our state, those people that we go to church with and we go to school with. And I hope and I pray that more of the people that we love don't lose their lives because they stopped calling police.
Chair recognizes Mr. Spiller to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I appreciate the comments of everyone that spoke, and I appreciate the comments of those, even in opposition. Much of what they have said, I would be in total agreement with. And I respect their positions, and I respect the positions they have. Everyone's district is different. Everyone votes their district. I get that. But I want to say what this bill is not about. This bill is not immigration reform. It's not comprehensive immigration reform. This bill, as much as I'd like to talk about SB 4, is not about SB 4 either. This bill is the strongest border security bill, indirectly, that we could have this session. This bill is the strongest law enforcement bill that we can have this session. I've said that consistently for months, and I mean that because I understand what this means. I understand what is necessary. This bill doesn't target anyone except people that are accused of breaking the law and have federal warrants existing against them that are already incarcerated
Mr.
on other
Speaker,
charges.
Ms. Weiner, for what purpose?
will the gentleman yield for
In just a
some
moment,
questions?
and I won't be long. So that's what this bill does. This bill is about public safety. This bill addresses problems with some counties that are not checking, or some that don't have the help and the resources that we're providing them in this bill to check and do these things. Smaller counties, but also larger counties. It helps everyone. The funding is there, the reimbursement grant is there, the simplicity of participating in the warrant service model is there. That's all we're asking, is for them at a minimal level to do what is necessary to identify people that they already have in jail and report that to ICE. And that's what we should be doing to cooperate with our federal partners to make sure that Texas is safe. These concerns have been raised about how dangerous our communities are. Our communities are more dangerous if we don't do this and we don't identify these folks and we look with a blind eye toward what's going on and we let them out into our communities and they reoffend and they do things, sometimes heinous crimes. And we can't have that. That's why this bill is so important. And before I run out of time, again, I want to thank those that I've worked with. I appreciate been a great friend with everyone involved, but Representative Lauterbach has done a fantastic job and knows this very well. But I appreciate also even some of those that we worked with that have been critical of what we had and try to make it better. And if anyone knows that I have a bill anytime, I want to have the best bill that we can, and I will listen, and I have listened, and we have listened, and it may not be the perfect bill. It may not be the perfect bill for everyone in this room, but I think that we have a good bill, and I think we have something that would.
Will the gentleman yield for
In
questions
just a second,
before he runs out of time?
I'll be quick. And so, again, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank them and thank Senator Schwartner for filing this, and appreciate working with him and appreciate everything. With that, yes, I would yield.
All right, Mr. Speaker.
Ms.
Sweeter for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield for
Yes,
The
questions?
gentleman yield for questions.
Yes,
He yields for questions.
Thank you so much, Representative Spiller. I thought you were going to get close to running out the clock on me. Representative Spiller, when we heard your version of this bill, we were in subcommittee together, correct?
Correct.
Now, so even the warrant services model will result in some counties having to keep people in jail for longer than they would otherwise, correct?
I don't believe that. They can identify those people at their intake, and as said, they wear two hats. When they're doing an intake and they book them in, all they have to do, if they're trained, can get into that system, know how to operate that, know if they have an ICE warrant, notify ICE. There's nothing that causes a delay. Under that process, there's nothing that causes anyone to stay in that jail 1 day or 1 minute longer than they otherwise should.
But there's nothing that makes ICE come get those people on the same day, correct?
No, they've got 48 hours.
So they might have to keep somebody 48 hours who might have been released same day for something, say like an unpaid parking ticket or an unpaid traffic ticket, correct?
Well, what they could do is these people are going to be, and I don't know that they're taking people to jail for parking tickets, but
I had someone in my district go to jail
Right.
for an unpaid
Okay.
traffic ticket
All right.
and end
But-
up with an ICE hold.
But nonetheless, the bigger concern is these people that are picked up and processed and let out back into the community. And so that's what this bill is trying to address. I don't think that the problem is that they're going to be there necessarily longer. Some of these folks are going to be there anyway because if it's a more serious crime and the bond is a certain amount, they may not be able to bond out, or at least not initially.
And I agree with you on that, Representative Spill. I think I'm thinking about these very low-level offenders arrested for something small would have been out very soon. There are instances where the county jail is going to have to keep those folks longer.
Well,
and in addition to the reasons brought up by some of our colleagues, the other reason this concerns me is I am in a county with a Republican sheriff who does not want to use our scarce sheriff's office resources and our scarce jail resources to step in and do the federal government's job. Do you really think that my county, when we are spending over $3 million a year to ship inmates to other counties because we don't have the jailers to keep folks in Hays County, should have to pick up that tab?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, I think that the people that you were talking about that would be coming in and being arrested, you have to understand, for them to apply here, they would have to have a federal existing warrant against them. So they might be there in jail for a minimal offense, but it may be a very serious warrant or a removal warrant that may be in place. But the other is,
But
I don't
those
believe that it's
those
going to...
federal warrants are not necessarily for crimes.
They don't
They're
have to be.
often for immigration violations,
Right.
correct?
And that is a concern as well. Why, all those things are concerns. But you have an ICE warrant, but you may have a warrant for removal. And warrant for removal is what it sounds like. They need to be removed from our country, and there's a legal basis for why they would be, why
But
that
we
warrant
could
be
be
issued.
dealing with somebody with no violent criminal history whatsoever, no threat to the community, and my county is still going to be required to spend resources, bed space, time on keeping that person incarcerated under your bill, correct?
And my concern and what we've tried to do, therefore, because to the extent that that is possible, I'm not going to say it's not possible. I don't think it's probable, but to the extent that that is possible, that's why we have grant funding in here and we have reimbursement funding in here, and all of that is in place for your sheriff. If that's a concern, he has a recourse and an opportunity to address that.
Representative Spiller, we have law enforcement shortages across the state, and I appreciate the funding, but that doesn't solve the problem that there aren't enough people to hire to come work in the jails.
Well, that's a whole
so
different bill.
why are we
Yeah.
redirecting our law enforcement personnel from doing the work they actually need to protect us to trying to lock up folks who may have an ICE removal due to missing a hearing
Number one,
and
these
maybe
people are
arrested
locked
for
up.
something small and nonviolent?
Okay, number one, these people are locked up already for a different reason. We're not locking them up under this warrant service model. No one is going out and arresting people to bring them in under the warrant service model. It doesn't work that way. It hasn't worked that way. It can't work that way. So that's not happening. So and I think when you talk about doing their job, part of their job, respectfully, is that they need to cooperate with other law enforcement agencies, and that includes our federal partners.
But why does that have to mean they have to keep somebody in jail for an extra 48 hours for something that under normal circumstances somebody would bond out under same day?
And
And you may say improbable, but people get arrested for unpaid traffic violations. They get arrested for a joint.
Yeah.
They get arrested for, handing off a cigarette to someone who's 20 instead of 21. There are things that aren't serious dangers to our society where we want to prioritize law enforcement resources that result in arrest, correct?
And I'm just saying, if we have federal warrants existing about someone that's arrested on another completely unrelated charge, we need to know about it. Law enforcement needs to know about it. Our communities were safer because of it. We can't not do that.
But I want us to be clear, those federal warrants have nothing to do usually with dangerous activity. They have to do with immigration processes, correct?
I would respectfully disagree. Under an ICE warrant, yes. Under an order for removal, which my bill also covers, no. Those folks have done something potentially bad and may have, and we need to be able to identify those people for public safety's concern.
Potentially, but not necessarily. Some of those folks have missed hearings, correct? Like, can you acknowledge your bill is going to catch people who do not
My bill isn't
pose
going
a
to catch anybody that
serious
doesn't need to
threat
be
our
caught.
community?
Not this bill. This bill doesn't catch anybody that doesn't need to be, that's not already caught and doesn't need to be identified. That's what this bill does.
Representative Spiller, I respectfully disagree, but thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Lowe, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Gentleman yield for questions?
Yes, I will. Yes, I will.
If you enter this country,
Gentleman's time has expired.
they're criminals.
I move passage.
Question occurs on passage third reading. Record vote. Clerk, ring the bell. So Mr. Louderback voting aye. Mr. Spiller voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? There being 89 ayes and 50 nays, Senate Bill 8 passes third reading.